Hello.
Hello. You can't see it, you've got a room full of people looking at you on a big screen.
Feel straight.
So, welcome, and I'll let you start.
Okay. So my name is Ingrid and I'm calling from Oslo. Nice to be here, even though I can't see you guys. So I'm just going to start my presentation. I will share my screen with you. Okay, do you see it now?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so this is just a talk that I gave earlier, or last year, about our accessibility law and how we use JavaScript and CSS custom properties. I will not tell you everything that I did, but you can find it on YouTube or, yeah, if you want to watch the whole thing later. We'll just start with telling a story. So in Norway we have two big airline companies. One is called SAS and the other one is called Norwegian. And SAS launched their new website 2 years ago. They have really done a lot of changes to it. And it didn't go long before you saw this. So this is headlines in two of Norway's biggest newspapers. And they're saying SAS new website fails and SAS might risk fines for the new website. And that is because in Norway, inaccessible websites are illegal. So to make sure that this law is applied and followed, we have this state agency, which is called DIFI. They will make random checks and publish the reports online. So when a big airline company like SAS publish a new website, of course, they will look into this site and see how accessible it is. And the laws that we have to follow is based on the WCAG guidelines. It's mostly the AA criteria, which is the one that is highlighted in green. This is just a sample of the whole guideline, so it's a lot of more things you have to be compliant with, but yeah, just to give you an impression of what you have to fulfill. And later, I think this was summer, last summer, we saw another headline where it says that the SAS might receive daily fines for 15,000 pounds a day if they don't fix their issues within 10 days. So actually in Norway, WCAG can make headlines in the newspaper. It's not about a question of moral anymore, so it really makes SAS look incompetent, like they didn't understand technology at all. And in worst case, you can lose customers. If you are not able to book tickets through SAS, of course, you will go to the competitor, since there are only two, so yeah. I had a look at DIFI today, at what other things they have done. So this is a report they published last summer. So they have invested 278 different websites. They look both into private and public sectors, which is unique for Norway, that also private sector also have to follow these laws. And so they published their results, where you can see a draft from it here. It's I've used Google Translate, so the English might be a bit weird. But I hope you'll catch the meaning. So here we can see that actually the police has the best website when it comes to accessibility. They got a 5-star, which only 3 of the websites they tested got, and 6 is the best, and none of our websites actually managed to get that. So they were testing against 15 or 16 requirements out of 35 from the WCAG guidelines. So it wasn't even a complete test they were doing. And they were doing these randomly, and since it's on the web, the content will change constantly, so it's like a test for that instance. I haven't heard anything about any outcome of this report, that anybody have received fine or such things like that, but you will get the result from the report and then you will have to fix it. Okay, so that was StyleFile. A little bit about Confer, where I work. So what you're using now is Confer. So this is a video conferencing straight in the browser. And our customers, they typically have their own brand when they come to us. So we are white label app, so they can choose whatever colors they would like to represent their brand. So when it comes to accessibility, you have the contrast issue. So what happens if you let people pick any color they like? So here's two examples, one from Twitter and the other one from Intercom, where we have picked our brand color, which is yellow, and we can see that the contrast is not good enough. So that was the problem that we had to solve. So we sat down and our CEO said, what if people could just pick any color they like and we will just fix accessibility? So we have to fix that. So just to have a look at what contrast is in the meaning of VK. To follow the AA criteria, you need to have a contrast of at least 4.5. And for the new 2.1 standard, that also applies for non-text elements like interfaces, icons, buttons, etc. Okay, so to figure out the contrast, if it's good enough, you will take the luminance of one color and divide it on the luminance of the other. So the luminance will be either 0, which is black, or 1, which is white. So all the values in between. So for this case, we will take the luminance of yellow and divide it on 0, and we will add just a constant to avoid dividing by 0 issues. So that will give us a contrast of 12.4, which is greater than 4.5. So this contrast is sufficient. But what happens if one of our customers has blue as their brand color? We can't see the text anymore. This is not good enough. So there is an easy fix to that. We can just change the text color to white. And there, the contrast is good enough. And for gray, if you think about the map I just saw, any shades of gray will either validate against white or black. So how do we do this in code? So me and Inge, we sat down and asked ourselves, what if we can do math on colors? That should solve our issues. And of course, there is an NPM package for that. So we went ahead and installed the package called Color. And to avoid calculating the contrast each time, we could use CSS custom properties that will store our calculations into variables that we can use throughout our style sheet. So this is how we did it. So we import the color from the color library. We created an instance of color, passing in our brand color. This is our yellow color. And then we created another one, the primary color contrast, which is either black or white, depending on if the primary color is light or dark. So there we have our main brand color and the text color. And to store it, you can use JavaScript, where we store the color primary, which is the name of the variable and the value, and the same for the contrast. And to use it in our style sheet, you can use the var keyword and access the variable name and set it as our background color, and then use the contrast as the color. So this is how you use CSS custom properties. So I will not go into any more details about that you can find on internet. There is a lot of good resources out there. Okay, so this is an example of one of our customers where we have the brand color, which is green, and you can also see there is purple color on the top. That is a secondary color which is also generated using code. And the contrast is also calculated based on that. So we have, that was just one of the issues that we had. We had also a couple of more, which I will go into in the original presentation that you can find online. Okay, so I'll just show you a quick demo. So here you can find the link to the presentation and also this color contrast thing we have made. So here you can choose the brand color. You can adjust it and you can also see how the other values changes. So here's our primary color. We also calculate lighter and darker versions of that and the contrast that is used for the buttons and the secondary colors and lighter and darker versions of those. So here is the buttons, and if we have a really light brand color, you can see a border is added as well, so you can see that it's still a button, so it doesn't disappear on the background. Okay, so just to finish up, we never consider accessibility as a work that is finished. It's like the other things that we do on the web for code and design and UX. It's an ongoing process, and accessibility should always be a part of that. And it really is a team effort. We haven't come up with this solution if we hadn't worked together with design, UX, and engineering. And we don't feel like this law is any constraint. We really love it, and we think it makes our product better. And it can simply just be fun. So we had a lot of fun doing this project. This is a link with the resources. And that is it for my presentation. So if you have any questions, I will stop sharing my screen so you can see me again.
Thank you for that. Right, does anyone have any questions? In the room? Any questions?
Hello, my name's Graham Frith from Diabetes UK. What about content? Because you talk about a team effort, and you can design all the JavaScript and the CSS, but what about ensuring the content is accessible?
Did you hear that?
Not quite.
Right. He said, what about content? He said it was a team effort and people working together, but how do you make sure that your content is accessible?
So the rest of the content on the website?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So we try to ask these questions when we implement our code. So we have a code review, so any accessibility things will be catched there. We also do regular tests, like checking with screen readers and things like that to make sure that it is compliant. And also just have these discussions. And our UX designer, she is really into making accessibility sites, so she really pushes us to think for accessibility and make it better.
Cool. There's one at the front here as well.
Hello, Max. I was wondering, so how did you come up with the math stuff? Did you put some algorithms or?
So the question was, how did you come up with the math stuff? Did you put some algorithms?
Who was the brain behind it?
Who was the brain behind it?
We found it in this NPM library. So the color library that we are using, they already have these functions implemented. So we can just use those. So we didn't have to reinvent it. So it's very convenient.
Cool.
Hi, I don't know. Do you share a lot of information as it's law? A lot of the things like that, colour information, would you share that openly with other organisations?
So the question was, as you've got the law in place, do you share a lot of the information, like that colour information, freely with other organisations?
Not as much as I would hope for. Different websites and organizations in Norway have been better with sharing their code in general. So we have, for instance, multiple agencies and governments who are sharing their assets, like how do they implement buttons and such. So there it will be easier to share that knowledge when it comes to code, at least. We also have different meetups, and accessibility has really been something that people are more interested in and uses more energy to do right. So the focus has shifted, and it's really popular in order to know these things about accessibility. But we can always be better, absolutely. And DIFAG also has a guidance on how to implement stuff correctly.
Okay. We've got one more. If you could pass the microphone back. We'll take one more question, and I think we'll need to move on to the panel.
Hi, my name's Sabrina. So you talked a bit about the importance of having the right contrast and colours. I guess that's for people with visual impairments. And then I can imagine there's also things like subtitles, for example, for videos. Is there anything else that people should generally consider to make a website accessible, apart from the contrast and making, like, translating audio, basically?
Sorry. Hello?
I'm still here.
Yeah, you're still online. Well, you've vanished off the main screen for some reason.
Okay.
Well done. Hopefully, you'll reappear. There it is. Sorry about that. So the question was, you've looked at contrast, and we're assuming there's also things like subtitles on videos, but what are the other accessibility things you might need to consider for a website?
Yeah, so basically it's followed the semantic when you write HTML, so that you have your headlines correct and use the right tags. It's easy to just use divs and not actually think of the content that you are using, like articles, sections, and stuff like that. And also do what the elements are used for. Like if you have a select, like a drop-down list, use that. Yeah, so there's a lot of things to consider. The list is long, so the contrast is just a small part of it. But if you stick to the normal HTML semantic and try to follow that so it makes sense, then you have done a lot of work. Good work. Mm.
She had a link for some resources. Could you just show that up again?
We'd just ask you if you could show the link for resources. I'm hoping you could share it with us, and we'll share it in the blog post and the meetup group afterwards as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, should I share it now as well?
Yeah, if you could just quickly share it now, that'd be great.
Yeah. Here we go.
There we go. A couple of people taking photos. Thank you very much. Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much for joining us, Iqbal.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Okay.
We're going to move on to our panel discussion now.
Then I'll hang up.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Okay, bye.
Cheers.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Cool. Whilst we're getting the slides fixed, I would like to ask the panel to come forward. Just take a seat. This is going to look super official with the lecture and stuff here. Please bear with us. On that note, I would just like to introduce myself. My name is Damian Disapyanandan, but because this is about accessibility, you can just call me Dama. And we're just going to quickly go each person to just quickly introduce yourselves. You've got 90 seconds to do so, each and every one of you, and then we'll go straight into a few questions and have a bit of space and scope to get the audience to ask any questions that we might have about accessibility as well. So with Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hey, so I'm Rich Stinning. I'm a contractor here at Cancer Research UK. I've been here for the past year working exclusively on the About Cancer section of the website, which is a section of the website which contains patient information and health information to prevent cancer. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of work with sort of low literacy audiences, and we're trying to make our sort of website, certainly that section of it, as accessible to everyone as possible, because that's sort of the key information we want to get through to everyone.
Before we move on, can you in the back hear us okay? If not, there are so many places up front, so just move forward. Yeah.
I'm Eleanor Denniston. I'm a digital supporter, engagement product manager at Parkinson's UK. I'm a new role in the digital supporter engagement team. We're a small team of 5. We support our fundraisers digitally. I'm looking after the donations and membership platform, which I believe is nearly 2 years old now, and it's about moving that forward and making it the best it can be. I started e-commerce, so I like seeing money through the tills, I always refer it to, and just making that experience as best as possible.
Hi everyone, I'm Rachel Jones and I also work at Parkinson's UK, so I'm a senior content editor on our content team, so my remit's pretty broad across the website, so I work on our content, so whether that's for people affected by Parkinson's or researchers or healthcare professionals, we have kind of numerous different audiences as a charity, and I also kind of support other teams across the organisation, so we've been kind of devolving content out and kind of training other teams on being able to manage their content, optimising it and making sure it's accessible, so that's kind of quite a large part of my role, and sort of we've been going through kind of an accessibility review of the site in general at the moment as well, so we're kind of in the thick of it, so yeah.
Hi, my name is Alexa Burney. I work as a designer at DXW Digital. So my role is just helping and creating better digital services for the public sector and the third sector. Normally I work with a multi-disciplinary team to get there, so building user-centered solutions, meeting the user needs in terms of the accessibility from accessible journeys, in terms of like making sure that the journey is easy to follow, or HTML semantics and building accessible services on the web.
Great. Thanks for being on our panel. Before I ask you a lot of questions, I would actually like to hear from the audience. To just get a gist of who you actually are and what sort of topics we should be tackling as well. So, who here works for a charity and is in a fundraising role? No? Wow. Okay. Who works for a charity and is in a comms and marketing role? Works specifically on content? Service delivery? Any digital delivery services? Okay, cool. Yeah, so it's like a mixture of different topics that we can touch upon. We'll also come to fundraising because it is quite important if we want to deliver our services. But the first sort of question that I think would be great to ask is if you could all share one of the most important things that you have learned or come across, little small nuggets of wisdom that you've come across when you try to implement something to make a particular product more accessible. And starting with you, Rich, especially on low literacy and so on.
Yeah, so I think obviously the guidelines are incredibly important, specifically with code, but like a lot of the stuff that we've done, we've been testing on low literacy audiences and people with learning disabilities too. And we've learned a lot of insight through doing that, and I think it's like 40% of the UK population are classed as lower literacy, so that's a learning age of D to G or below at GCSE.
What exactly do you mean by lower literacy?
Exactly that. So in theory, they've got a reading age of GCSE English from grades D or below, and that's adults as well. So that's 40% of the population. And it's one thing making your website accessible, but actually, if they're not understanding that content in the first place, then you're falling at the first hurdle. So a lot of the stuff that we've done is sort of testing. We've been using a lot of iconography and things like that as well, and actually testing on the users. We found that some people get really confused by that iconography. So a lot of the time we're sort of expected that that's correct, but I think testing on users actually allows you to really sort of get to the core of the problems really necessarily, rather than just relying on the coders to do everything, or testers.
I don't know if we might say the same thing, but I guess is where going through this at the moment, physically sitting and understanding how accessibility tools work, because I've never experienced that before. That was really quite key for me to like learn and watch someone using our website with the tool that they're using. So I've been able to take some time and learn and watch. It's amazing.
Yeah, really valuable, and I guess kind of taking people with you on that journey as well. So it's not just us that create the content, loads of people across the charity do, and they all have kind of different audiences that they're creating that content for. So like we were saying in the presentation earlier, it's not a hindrance, it's something that's really beneficial. So taking people on that journey, making sure, and they're sort of keeping them involved in that and seeing it as something really valuable to everybody. So yeah, I think that's getting everyone on board.
Like for me, experiencing, like trying to use assistive technologies myself, and like I could notice how there's this big difference on the focus on like the visual stuff quite often, and how we don't cover most of the cases, and like we focus so much on contrast and elements and colors and patterns, but it's quite often sometimes the structure is completely illogical, like you cannot navigate through the website. We're so used to having a keyboard, we're using a mouse, but using mouse for pretty much everything, and we can notice and see what's going on. But then when you turn to either using just a screen reader that just reads through all the links, or the navigations are extremely difficult, or the links are skipping, or you get completely lost in the content, it's completely different to kind of change your perspective. Because I did some sort of accessibility exercises when I was a landscape architect student, and that was connected with the space. So we were using wheelchairs, we were blindfolded to experience the space, and that expanded your perspective to design more accessible spaces. And with the digital, it's also similar. It's useful to experience using assistive technologies, but because they kind of expand your perspective and you think slightly differently about it.
So quite a lot of you, and I assume that you also have a particular co-creation process then, to actually work with the people that you're trying to serve, is that right? Can you maybe, do you want to talk us through one of the processes for a particular example where you've done that?
So we would have, because quite often when we work on projects for central government or local authorities, we would try to build a particular type of service. So we would do a lot of user research, user interviews, and for example, if part of the audience is people with learning disabilities, we would do user research particularly focused on that user group, and drawing from findings, giving like examples and recommendations to improve the service or the website. Quite often I've used an empathy lab that is accessible at Government Digital Services Building. It's quite well equipped. But when we sometimes build beta service, which is going to go to the public, you always have to pass a service assessment, and accessibility is like a really big thing, very important part of it in order to pass the service assessment. So our team quite often goes to Wales, like my friend Amy, she went to Wales to the Digital Accessibility Centre to watch accessibility audit, and that's quite, and we kind of learn from each other, if that makes sense. So we share the learnings, like we did this, and this is what we learned, and this is where we need to improve, because you get like a big report telling you where you need to improve.
So maybe just going on into the implementation of some of the recommendations that come through then, how are there any particular technologies or tools that you use in order to comply? Or is there anything that you know of that you can share with the audience? Are there specific hacks that you use, especially when it comes to content as well? I mean, there's loads on, for example, SEO, but SEO doesn't necessarily mean accessibility either, so if you can share anything, that would be great.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we kind of work with editors across the charity to help them. So as part of that training and kind of upskilling, we have a suite of tools that we use and help people to use. So one of those is Site Improve. I don't know if anyone uses that, some nods. And that has a whole accessibility module, and that will continue to crawl your website and pick things up. And that's really great because it picks up things, simple things like links, headers, things like that, generic link text, which is a good one, button text, that kind of thing, but also things around readability, like I was saying. So a lot of our content, like I was saying, might be research focused or for healthcare professionals. So it might, not be as plain English as we would like. So we're working through to, because when we went to have our review, people who still have accessibility requirements, for all sorts of things. So things like that it picks up that you can continually improve, and it's good to have eyes on that all the time, and also give that tool to other people to use as well, and kind of take that ownership of any new content that they produce. So yeah, that's a really sort of useful tool that we use a lot.
Yeah, I think in terms of content, although I can't specifically speak for the content team, we actually have a content team here. I've just been working with some writers who are nurses as well, but we get them to use Hemingway, I believe, which is quite a common one. But we also have plain English accreditation, sort of third-party auditors that I think once a year they review the site. Not the whole site, but quite a few pages at random, and they'll give us a sort of reading age, which we're currently at reading age of 9, so people with a reading age of 9 in theory can understand in general our content. We're trying to get that down to 7 or below is the ideal situation, but that's quite a good sort of fair justification of what sort of level you are at in terms of content. But then there's other tools in terms of from more of the design aspect that we use in the UX team, like the WebAIM colour checker, which is quite common. I mean, there's a lot of colour checkers online. I think that's usually probably the first one on Google, which is usually just automatically put 2 colour references in and it will tell you if you're compliant, things like that. There's a Chrome plugin called Wave, which is a sort of, it crawls the page and just highlights much of the same as that software you were talking about, heading tags and alt tags and things like that you might have missed out on. That's just a free plugin, but I believe the QA department here will also use something called Power Mapper, which is like, I think it's called Power Mapper. It's a site mapper ultimately that has an accessibility tool on that as well. That's the more QA department.
Yeah, does anyone work as a front-end developer, use developer tools in the browser? Technical? Just Yeah, so basically Chrome and Mozilla, they have like accessibility check-ins and tests built in. There's plenty of different browser extensions you can try and check. Also accessibility, not just like checks, but also experience it through the site of other people with different site problems, if that makes sense. So it's quite good. What else? What else is there?
There's one called Something Coffee, I think, which is the one I've looked at with visual sort of impairments.
So, one last question before we open it up to the audience. If you, so imagine, because Cancer Research UK, Parkinson's, and obviously working for local authorities, I can't speak, GLA and locals, there must be a particular budget where you can actually, or I'm making a big assumption that you have a budget to continuously iterate and prototype and continuously improve your services. But if you were to imagine that you have absolutely no budget, how would you go about improving your website, for example? What is the one tweak or change that you would make to actually making your website more accessible?
Trick question.
What do you mean by no budget? If you have a team that already working?
Like you have absolutely zero budget in your comms budget line for the year where you cannot make any particular major changes, but you could change a particular thing on the website.
So you wouldn't have a team that takes care of the website on a general thing, right?
No, especially for smaller charities, if any are here, we have that no team.
I guess if you're using any WordPress plugins, they might help you. It kind of depends how the website is set up. So WordPress tends to be quite easy to do. You might learn, teach yourself a little bit of CSS and edit things from the CSS menu, I guess. Probably try to push forward to do the accessibility checks. If it's like a content management system thing, make sure that your navigation, when you're publishing blog post, if it's like a normal thing, just make sure that the order is logical and the content is accessible in the content itself. But if it was built like 10 years ago by a team of people that just didn't care about it, without a budget it will be very difficult unless you just scrape everything off and rebuild it yourself. Or just rebuild like as a WordPress website, because you have in general as if you do like a vanilla setup, it has quite good accessibility built into it. So in terms of navigation, search field, because it's just like if you don't look into the code and dig it and then ship it, it would be quite difficult, I think. What's your experience?
Tricky question. I would say, accessibility is ongoing, as we've heard. It's never something, it's not a tick box that you're just suddenly done with. So if there was a way of kind of, having a site that was up to date automatically with those things that change with your user needs constantly changing, that would be a dream. But that's not going to happen. But yeah, I suppose it's taking into account that people's needs are always changing and never going to be done. It's an ongoing thing and something that could account for that if there was no budget. Because obviously it's just, you've only got limited time and money, so it's prioritising constantly and shifting priorities, which is,
So it's essentially advocating for a budget.
Well, that Wave tool is free, and that does give you the sort of page markup, so you can check that the code at least complies. So that's a free tool.
Are there any questions from the audience?
Accessibility and accessibility and fundraising. What do you do to make it as easy as possible to gather donations? And like, what kind of platforms do you use, and do you manage or do you monitor like fulfillment rates and things like that?
So our donations platform was made by WPN Edition. So they, I don't know if anybody else's platform here in Oslo uses them, because they do quite a lot of charity checkouts. I feel like it's quite easy to use, but there were some things that have been missed that actually I was going to say, if you've got zero budget, things like labelling that we really shouldn't have missed, but you know, some buttons that are just called really random things that actually should just be called continue or pay, and they're not called that. So there was some things there that have got picked up when we went to the GAC. Yeah, I think making sure it's a logical, I feel like it's almost the same when it's just non-fundraising content, making sure it's everything is quite clear and logical. Your buttons go and do the right thing, because that also hasn't happened in some instances. Just really making things easy for screen readers, because that's something that came out that wasn't working as well. So.
In that regard, it's also in that regard, it's also important to just look at the wider user journey. So it's if you were someone who's never donated before and just want to give a one-off donation, let's say you don't necessarily you're not a baby boomer and cannot afford to donate. What is the easiest way to actually do that? And are there any platforms that other charities, bigger ones, smaller ones are using that you could also use for others? So there's quite a big group on digital charities. There's particular fundraising Slack as well, and there's always the same questions around how do you do contact-based donations? Is it tap donate, or you use any particular other service? And it's really worthwhile just grabbing the hive mind of people and looking into whether they can give you very good answers to that question.
Yeah, making sure people can get to your donation page is key. So making sure that's clear in like your header or something like that.
What about forms?
Yeah.
Forms, labeling.
Yeah, so we've like pulled up a few issues there where fields aren't labelled correctly and that kind of stuff.
Hi there. I also work for a health charity where we present quite a lot of information on our website. Obviously we want to make sure this is nice and accessible for as many people as possible. So I've kind of got a two-part question. One is, how do you go about recruiting participants for user research that may have a lower level of literacy? And two, obviously all of our health information content goes through clinical review, and it's kind of co-written with members of our clinical team, who will sometimes want to put as much information in there as possible. So you're not so how do you go about kind of educating them that sometimes less is more, and you need to just try and keep it as nice and simple as possible?
So yes, nodding there. So yeah, we, similar to you here, have a kind of information content team who look after that and work, and everything goes through reviews. And I think it's very much a continual process, and it's I suppose just looking at the impact that something has when you do remove those barriers that there might be to people having that, and particularly having, I mean, we've had this review done now, and we've kind of got the evidence that needs to be done, and being able to show that you're reaching more people and more professionals through writing something or structuring something in a certain way is probably, I guess, the biggest tool that you have, because ultimately that's what you're trying to do. But yeah, and it's again, it's an ongoing thing of trying to serve as many people as possible. But yeah, it can be tricky. But I think trying to demonstrate the value of it is probably the biggest thing you could do.
Would you have a user research team on that?
We have we do have one user researcher, and we're currently going through quite a major website overhaul. So we did quite a lot of user research up front at that point. But yeah, we want to try and build it in as this ongoing thing.
Yeah, because we had a conversation before everything started, and we mentioned that NHS Digital has released their service manual. So I would tricky just point them like, look, they're talking about accessible content and kind of referring to a higher, like a broader professional institution. Yeah, institution, and say like they're doing it the right way, and we want to do it the right way too. I guess you can look up because I think it's been like more publicly released about 2 weeks ago, so it's not everyone knows about it, but it's worth looking at because they've also done a lot of work on accessibility, not just content but design patterns, and yeah, really good work. They've done really good work on this.
I have something to add. Cancer Research UK, my name's Greg. We did something whereby we had this issue of medical specialists writing content, and we wanted to kind of persuade them that less is more. And we used, I believe, a tool called Optimizely. Can we use that? To essentially do A/B testing on the website. So have the same page in 2 different versions, and then see what gets better usage in the real website. And that could be a tool we use to kind of convince people that this is less is more. I think you had another question about getting on board.
Yes, and actually, I think if you get to that stage first, then and you involve content writers in the process of being in front of users, they'll see very quickly that those medical terms won't work.
Yeah.
And I'd say you start with recruiting users, which is very tricky, but if you get that job done and then are able to involve the content writers in the process, then I don't think you'd have many problems in convincing them. So we were fortunate enough, I mean, we tried here, we contacted many libraries and community centres and adult learning centres with very limited luck actually, but I think as charities we do actually, I mean, this audience is a very tricky audience to get. Anyway, we also use a marketing agency here who charge quite a lot of money, who are user research agency too. They like to be remarketing themselves as this now. But they charge a lot of money and they couldn't find anyone. They've got the biggest database there is out there. It's largely because you can't really test the users as such and say, oh yes, these guys are low literacy. It's not something really people like to ask or test. So the kind of only approach is to contact these centres. And yeah, that's a struggle, but as charities we can definitely have that like one step ahead. We were fortunate enough to know someone that knew someone in one of their adult learning centres, and now we pay the people that come along, of course, but it's very, what we've got at the moment now is a very sort of cheap thing that we've set up. So we've only done 2 sessions so far, but I think we've now got this relationship where we're sort of aiming to go back every bi-monthly, and we've got, they even recruit for us almost. We sort of put it out there. There's a poster that goes up in the learning centre, and obviously there's people getting paid for it, so they're quite happy to sort of stay around for a few hours. At the moment we've had day sessions, which have been really useful in getting content writers involved in that, which might be a bit of an internal sell sometimes, but certainly here they're very supportive of that. Certainly we've got a lot of accessibility improvements to make anyway, but yeah, it's I think once you've involved people in that process, then they'll soon realise they need to sort of change.
It's also worthwhile just getting in touch with some universities, because quite oftentimes they have particular labs where they have
particular labs where they do user testing on particular issues. So that's how Wayfinder, for example, sort of spun out, and I recall that they spun out doing work with RNIB and being supported by one of the Imperial College labs, I think. But quite a lot of the startups that we invest in
my day job, get in touch with quite a lot of academia and research labs, and they are just super, super helpful in just providing me services for free and actually helping you to recruit what they sometimes refer to as a panel. So even having a sort of committed circle of people who continuously get involved into your user research as well is quite helpful. So.
Before we had that relationship with the Learning Centre as well, we did a lot of like guerrilla testing, just going out to places where you think you might be able to access these users. So yeah, we just went out to communities where we thought might be useful, with limited results, but if you keep sort of pushing that through, then you can verify things at least.
Try to answer that as well. I work with IXM Amy, I'm a user researcher. One of the ways we've gone about recruiting assisted digital users, we have a user agency, not a marketing research one, but a specific user recruitment agency. I think they're quite good and actually not too expensive. But again, we work with government, so we can kind of handle that a bit differently. The other thing that we've done is part of the questions when we're interviewing people. So, for example, we were looking at teachers who are looking for jobs. And at the start of the interview, we run through a couple questions quite quickly about how they're using digital tools, if they're using online to look for jobs, if they are using social media, and in answering those questions, it would give us a sense of what their experience is with using online media, and then from there we kind of put them as best we could on the scale, and then kind of just figure out how many more people we would need to speak to fill in those gaps, and that's really much of it.
I've got time for one more question, I think, and then we can continue on to lightning talk. So who wants to be that one person? No? No one? Come on, guys. Any final questions for our panel?
One more.
Yes.
Well, I'll ask them. It's okay. I was just, there's a number of questions, but one was, does anyone own the responsibility for accessibility? Is there, where is that found within your organization? Who is ultimately responsible?
Good question. Wow.
To add on that, do you in your organizations have a accessibility statement, for example, on your websites? Do you make that commitment?
We have diversity and inclusion statement, which covers accessibility as a company. For the clients, so we like, for example, our website, we own it. So for accessibility, we're responsible for it, I guess. We as a team of developers, user researchers, designers, everyone who works in a company is responsible for making sure the website is accessible. I guess with the clients it's much more tricky, because if we are building a new service, I think as a team we're responsible to make sure that what we're building is accessible, but we also need to, it's a bit more trickier if you have some website that's been there forever, and it's owned by multiple, you have like multiple stakeholders, Flutter, and that's like, I don't know, somehow, like getting into the people who kind of are the decision makers and trying to like get them to change that it must be tricky and difficult.
Yeah, I'd say similar for us. Obviously, we have our main website, and at the moment, I would say the ultimate responsibility would sit with our central digital and content team. But as we are with everything else across the site, we are trying to take everyone with us and give everyone the kind of skills, knowledge, tools to make accessibility their responsibility. Because it is, and obviously, like I said before, everyone works for a charity that we're trying to support a number of people. No one's going to hopefully turn around and say, oh, actually, I don't want to do that thing. It's going to make life easier for our people, and it's about that kind of culture change and trying to embed that. So eventually it won't, I would think, just sit with one team. And then we have obviously different products, digital products as well, that we're always building, and there are different people who are kind of product sponsors and product managers for those, and they don't just sit in the digital team, so they would I imagine, take kind of that responsibility for those and the accessibility ultimately for those. So yeah, it's shifting.
I'm a contractor here, so we probably have what I say, but I'm not sure about the statement that we may have. In terms of who owns it, it's owned by the UX team as such, but then we do have quite a big digital devolution thing going on, so we're trying to sort of educate everyone in it, and it definitely helps if you sort of got everyone from the ground sort of clued up on it to a degree. But I know the QA department here do an awful lot around the accessibility system as well.
Well, round of applause for our panel. Stay sitting back in the seats, but I believe, Agnieszka, you had a first sort of announcement for our lightning talks.
Yeah, does anyone wants to do a lightning talk?
Yeah. Anyone else? Do you want to share news about, are you hiring in your companies? Yeah. Is anyone looking for a job?
I'm looking for a job. I'm Parkinson's UK and we're looking for an innovation lead. So that this role will sit in the digital team but have responsibility across the whole organisation and be one of the key people that will lead us in our kind of journey towards being lean as an organisation, being agile as an organisation, and helping everybody get on board with that. So if that's you or you know anyone, it's a really exciting job. You get to work with me, those two. Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you very much.
Yes. Give me 1 second.
I was kind of prepared and then I was not prepared and I didn't prepared again. Sorry. That's okay.
In the meantime, I might have one. So, aside from this, I also need to do a hand count. Also run the Tech for Good meetup. If you are aware of it, it's on meetup.com/Tech for Good. And we have a meetup coming up next week, which is primarily focused, primarily encouraging a lot of women and fans to get involved in, because it's International Women's Day next week, Friday. We're doing a workshop to sort of discuss and uplift more women, well, discuss some of the challenges that we're facing in the particular Tech for Good and civic tech space. So if you are if you're keen to get involved, there should be more information by tomorrow, and there will be drinks and non-alcoholic drinks and alcoholic drinks if you need that on a Friday. And it should be really fun, and it should really encourage a lot more people and uplift them in order to get equal opportunities in this space. So tune in for that. And the other one I was going to mention, if anyone who works on ICT for development, we also have an ICT for development meetup coming up on the 19th of March, which is sort of following on from the Bond International Global Development Conference. So there's also going to be food and drinks again, so feel free to join. And over to you, Agnieszka.
Yes.
Do you want to talk about our next meetup? Yeah.
I want to tell that. Shoot, are you sure? Yes, I'm sure.
So tech always fails us.
Yeah, it's just like permission stuff. We will
Yay! Have
you heard about Empathy Lab?
Just by mentioning it.
Yeah. Is it this one better? Yeah. Yeah, we can kill the yeah, it's fine. Yes. Okay, so see this here? Fine, we can do this. We can do this. So I just kind of wanted to share some experience using Empathy Lab, and some of that I've already shared. Just to give some of the context, we were doing a project for Government Legal Department at their GLD digital platform. And to kind of give you a bit more about it quickly, so GLD Digital is their platform for that enables GLD lawyers to share and guidance on and resources with civil servants on like when they're dealing with any legal matters, and they wanted to use that platform to make their work more efficient and save money. And we helped them to move to GovPress, which is like our secure hosting thing for GovPress. No, wait, WordPress. And as a part of this, it kind of was going into public beta, so they had to make sure that the service passes, that they built passes accessibility requirements. So yeah, we knew that there was an empathy lab at the government digital service building. And before like a full accessibility audit, we were thinking, okay, let's try this and let's figure out what are the problems, because we haven't built the service, so we needed to kind of fetch and try to find any issues. So Empathy Lab it's a space where you have a lot of equipment of assistive technologies available. If we share the slides, if I make the slides public, there's lots of links in the notes, so you can know how to book a visit, because theoretically it is accessible, it's open for public. So, what's it called? Yeah, you should be able. It's accessible for public sector employees, so I think it should be alright. So, when you do accessibility testing, there are a few things that you need to be prepared, or trying to, like if you're trying to first time do stuff with accessible technologies, how do you go about it? This is like a big spreadsheet, so don't worry about it. The first thing we did like a list of accessibility, assistive technologies we wanted to check. Then on this row, I blurred our notes because it might be sensitive. So. And on this one, we made up a user journey. So we wanted the user to go from the page to an article. And they have a quite complex navigation system where I even have problems to find things. But we wanted to go through that basic user journey to, I'm finding an article just using navigation, and I'm finding an article just typing in a search button using VoiceOver, screen readers and Zoom text. So that was like the preparation, and we did it, 3 of us, 2 user researchers, Leanne, Eunice from Government Legal Department, and me. We've done testing with 3 of these assistive technologies. Screen readers, JAWS and Dragon speak naturally, and also I used Magnifier Zoom Text. We focus on these 3 because they are pretty expensive. So if you wanted to just buy a license to test it yourself, there are a few screen readers that are available for free, especially Apple has a really good support for this. And we were able to, so we didn't know how all these things work at all, but we had very good help and briefing from Richard Morton, who's a senior accessibility specialist. So he gave us like a brief and overview how to use these, and there's like a lot of help guides how to use assistive technologies. So that kind of helped us to find any big issues to start with. But also what was important, it helped us to experience how it is like, maybe not as a native user, but it still experience how people use assistive technologies to access the website, to navigate to websites and to get to things and read through it. So we learned through a lot. I'm just showing the map notes so you can find more information about it. but it's not a substitute for a full accessibility audit, and it's very important to test with the real users. So that's why quite often we go and use services such as Digital Accessibility Center, where our team, Amy and Link, went to test the service with the real users. You get an accessibility report at the end that tells you where you need to improve. So that was done last year. And you want to get everything 100% right, and we've talked about it, it's never finished. But it's really, really good to have this performed. And yeah, we also wrote a blog about it, so there's much more detail. And after these tests, I realized because there's so many resources on the web, I tend to open loads of tabs and I can get lost. So I found a free course that is kind of for front-end developers. It's a bit of advanced, you need to understand CSS, JavaScript and HTML, but it's quite good. I'm probably going to go through it twice because it's a lot of things to remember and to think about. But I highly recommend this course. It's on Udacity. I've put the link in the slide too. And that's who we are and what we do as the DXW Digital. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any lightning talks, information they wanted to share, or anything else? No? Where are we? So, we're done with the lightning talks. We've got some time for networking. Some more drinks, there's probably some pizza left by the amount that was there at the beginning. I'd just like to give a final shout out thanks to Manifesto for sponsoring the event, for the drink and the food, and I welcome the Cancer Research for lending us the offices as well.